So rather than a standard reading today, I'm going to start us off with a very short Apache prayer. Looking behind, I am filled with gratitude. Looking forward, I'm filled with vision. Looking upward, I am filled with strength. And looking within, I discover peace. Good morning and Happy New Year to all of you. Happy New Year. Okay, before I get started with this homily, I'm going to turn myself in. I'm guilty. Of what, you may ask? Well, in early December, I shared a Facebook meme. What was this horrible meme and what did it say? Well, it had a picture of the Grinch and it said, before I agree to 2022, I'm going to have to see the terms and conditions. Yeah, it got a laugh. And yeah, it summed up the exhaustion that we all seem to be suffering from heading into 2022. But it really doesn't fit with who I am, what I believe, and the message that I would like to bring to you today. So as I wrote today's homily, I went back to Facebook and I deleted that post. You see, my friends, the new year doesn't come with terms and conditions. We don't know exactly what this year will bring. Well, it's not entirely true. I can tell you this. 2022 will bring some sadness. It will bring some confusion. It will bring some struggles. But guess what? Every new year does. More importantly, 2022 will also bring joy, happiness, abundance, and creativity. So rather than that silly saying that I shared on Facebook, I would like to take us to one of the ISD principles of belief as my saying for 2022. Almost said 2021, 2022. We affirm the personal responsibility of the individual, and we affirm that we choose our happiness or unhappiness as we apply the laws of the universe. It's our responsibility to decide how 2022 will turn out. The energy that we put in is the energy that will be mirrored back to us. Now, the last time that I did the first homily of the year was January 5th, 2020, from our Dietz Street location. The title was Looking Back to Move Ahead, using the footprints of where we have been as guideposts to help us set our trajectory for moving forward. Little did I know, as I was giving that homily, what was coming. And so here we are, January 2nd, 2022, a lot of twos. By the way, the twos represent balance. So I think Diana touched on that. And the title of today's homily is Lighting the Path to the New Year, Stepping Forward with Care and Gratitude. So how do we light the path forward into 2022? I'm thinking we're just going to go back to that Apache prayer that I opened with, and let's just work our way through that. Looking back, I'm filled with gratitude. Now, over the last couple of years, since COVID began, I started to feel as if we're being ushered into a new era, a new and amazing time in history. But I have a hard time wrapping my head around COVID. And that started me wondering, if we were on the brink of a new era and also in the midst of a pandemic, could that be some kind of timeline marker? Were other eras in our past also heralded by pandemics? So I researched. And I found out that the Middle Ages began with the collapse of the Roman Empire and the first recorded plague pandemic, the Justinianic plague. Don't try and say that 3 times fast. One of the most deadly plagues in history, and it led us from antiquity into the Middle Ages. Now, during this medieval period, the Catholic Church became the most powerful institution, with kings, queens, and other leaders deriving much of their power from the protection of the church. And history says that there were few advances in art and science, and that there was violence, war, ignorance, famine. Now, the end of the Middle Ages, the beginning of the Renaissance, was triggered by many things: the end of the Crusades, conquest of Constantinople, the discovery of America, allowing the size of our world to expand, the invention of the printing press, so that sharing of knowledge and current events became more common, and the second great pandemic, the Black Death. Now, a couple of interesting points to make here, and I'm just giving these for interest purposes, but that second great pandemic that ushered in the Renaissance appears to have started in Asia and entered Europe through Italy. And that country, Italy, was hit with the plague particularly hard. Sound familiar? Another interesting fact about the second bubonic plague: I found a statement in a Wikipedia article that says, as a result of the decimation in the populace, the value of the working class increased, and commoners came to enjoy more freedom. To answer the increased need for labor, workers traveled in search of the most favorable position economically. Now, this statement was speaking to the fact that the plague hit the hardest in the populated cities and struck royalty as hard as the average urban dweller, and much harder than the farmers or the laborers who lived outside of the feudal cities. But it kind of reminds me of the Great Resignation of 2021, where so many workers decided that they didn't need to suffer with the conditions that they'd always known. They didn't need to put in 12-hour days and work for little pay. So in large groups, workers voluntarily resigned from their jobs to find more favorable positions. Now, the Middle Ages were known as the Dark Ages, and it was said that there were few advances in art and science. Remember I mentioned that? And yet, if it weren't for the Middle Ages, there would have been no Renaissance. During the Middle Ages, the Islamic world was growing larger and more powerful. Great cities in the Middle East, such as Cairo, Baghdad, Damascus, they had thriving poets, scientists, philosophers who wrote thousands of books. Inventors devised technologies such as the pinhole camera, soap, windmills, surgical instruments, an early flying machine, and even the system of numerals that we use today. All of these came from the Islamic world during this period. Even more importantly, scholars translated ancient Greek, Iranian, and Indian texts into Arabic during this time. And thanks to the Crusades, these translations of ancient texts found their way back to the Western world, directly contributing to the changes in thinking that led to the Renaissance. As a matter of fact, one of the scholars whose work had been studied in the East and was now available to those in the West was Aristotle. Aristotle, who brought us metaphysics, philosophy, the beginning of scientific thinking, of observing the world to come up with answers as to how it works. Aristotle's works demonstrated that we were able to begin to understand our existence, the universe, our place in it, without being dependent on church authority to tell us who we were and why we were here. And it was this thinking that contributed to the Protestant Reformation during the Renaissance. So, Dark Ages or not, it seems like we wouldn't be where and who we are today without that time in history. So why have I gone this far back? Well, because there are many similarities that I wanted to point out, which I did a few of them, right? And because, as I mentioned, I feel like we're on a precipice of a new era, what I'm going to call a new Renaissance. The word Renaissance comes from French, back, and naissance, birth. So it actually translates to rebirth, reborn. And it was characterized by an effort to revive and surpass ideas and achievements of classic antiquity. And it's also what my name means too, in case anybody cares. So the first Renaissance, it was a time of great strides in art, architecture, philosophy, literature, music, science, technology, politics, religion, and world exploration. And it gave us such greats as Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo, Copernicus, Dante, Shakespeare, Michelangelo. So I look back with gratitude to the past, to those who walked through these difficult eras in human history and brought us to the historic point that we're at today. I look back on just my lifetime and I see how amazing things have just been emerging with greater and greater speed. And I look back with gratitude at the last 2 years, at the changes that this pandemic has brought to us, to me, to you, and to our world in general. Which brings me to the next line of our Apache prayer. Looking forward, I am filled with vision. Most of us have spent the last 2 years doing some intense internal work, whether it was learning more about our intuitive connection, strengthening our spiritual beliefs, discovering the power in prayer and meditation, or working on unburying those parts of ourselves that we had hidden away and that required healing. And when we entered the year of the Great Pause in 2020, many people began to utilize the quarantine period, the time of quiet, away from the chaotic world, to connect to the stream of creativity that runs through us all. People began to look to writing, to drawing, to painting, to singing, to playing instruments, to discussing philosophy and metaphysics as a method for healing and connecting to our own divinity. So as our personal and planetary vibrations continue to raise, my vision for our future is that we're stepping into a wondrous rebirth as a society. We are birthing a new renaissance as a result of the quiet that COVID gave us. We will find epic strides happening in medicine, art, literature, music, science, philosophy, metaphysics. The new Da Vinci's, Galileo's, Copernicus's, Dante's, Shakespeare's, and Michelangelo's that emerge from this period, they're going to be doing so in a new and unique way by cooperating with each other to merge all of these fields. I see science and metaphysics flourishing hand in hand, philosophy and space exploration becoming teammates, literature and music becoming partners, art and medicine feeding each other. We'll go to the edges of what we thought possible and beyond. Our global new renaissance will be characterized by an effort to revive and surpass the ideas and achievements of those who came before us. Now, the next line of our prayer, looking upward, I am filled with strength. In my development circle on Tuesday, we set our intentions toward receiving messages for the new year. We started out in a meditation looking for our own personal messages, and then we asked for a larger message for us all, a group message, and then ended up giving each other individual messages. It's interesting how that ended up breaking out, self, collective, and others. It's kind of similar to the pathways we've been taking since COVID, working on ourselves, connecting to the collective energy that connects us, and then working to help and serve others. So the group or collective messages, they all had a similar theme about the road ahead being difficult, but that we needed to ensure that we allowed ourselves to rise above those things that we had no ability to change. And the messages we received for each other, they were full of joy and love. They talked about pouring love and understanding from full pitchers, knocking down walls that are in our way, blue skies, seeing one's own inner beauty. And when the circle ended, someone even mentioned, isn't it strange how the individual messages were so uplifting and yet the group messages talked about the time ahead being difficult? which started me thinking, difficult. I received a message from Spirit in automatic writing that said, you were a difficult child. Hello, ego. Wait one darn minute. I was a good kid, a little stubborn maybe, but why would you say I was difficult? I was kind of upset because I was viewing the definition for the word difficult as characterized by or causing hardship or problems. So fast forward that a little bit to the point where I actually looked up the meaning of the word difficult, and I found out there was another definition. Difficult, hard to understand, puzzling. Well, that makes a little more sense. Maybe I was a child who was hard to understand and puzzling to my parents and teachers. But I tell you this story because I feel like many of us are getting messages that the beginning of 2022 is going to be difficult. But maybe we're just looking at the wrong definition of the word difficult when we talk about this difficult time in history. And if the beginning of this year is going to continue to be difficult or hard to understand, we only need to remember to look up for strength. When we realize that the connections that we've worked on for the last 2 years are always available to help us work through those things that puzzle us or that we don't understand. So just like my vision of the future, where the humanities and the sciences will work together hand in hand, I see 2022 as the year that more people begin to understand that physical and spiritual worlds do not need to be separate. That we all have a partner to help strengthen us on this journey. God, Spirit, the universe, our own higher self, Christ or Buddhic consciousness, whatever it is that you define this partner as, our strength is found in realizing that they're a part of us. And the strength of knowing that none of us journey alone is what I wish for everyone in this coming year. And now to the last line of our prayer. And looking within, I discover peace. Now, my friend Elka invited me to join a New Year's webinar yesterday. And the people who were running it were talking about finding a word that summarized their resolution for 2022. Now, strangely enough, last week I'd been thinking about my goals for this coming year. And I'd received just a single word, clairaudiently. And the word that I received was equanimity. Now, I consider myself relatively good with the English language, but I did have to look the word up. I just wanted to make sure I was spelling it right and that it actually made sense for the context I was receiving it in. The definition: mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. Again, that word difficult. But equanimity is the word that I will try to embody in 2022. Finding the mental calmness and composure to step into joy this year, regardless of what happens around me. And I'm going to pose to you that this idea of finding a word that you want to embody for the coming year, that may be a new form of New Year's resolutions. What is your word? Is it gratitude, grace, joy, love? Look within yourself and find that inner word that you wish to embody in 2022. And keeping that word as your guidepost and knowing that you're doing your best to live it will go very far in cultivating inner peace. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on today is, again, a word. We've got a lot of words, right? A word that I received very strongly when I was creating this homily. And the word is careful. Moving forward with care. Honestly, we didn't wake up yesterday or today with all of the outside chaos calmed. We're in a period of change where society's infections continue to rise to the surface. Why? No, so they can be healed. So there will continue to be things happening around us that are difficult or hard to understand. But as one of the group messages in my circle said, we have the ability to rise above the bumps in the road. The key is an understanding that our job is to work on those things that are within our power and to not let ourselves be sidetracked by the things that don't belong to us. So maybe that Apache prayer is one that we can use as a mantra during 2022. So I'm going to close the same way that I opened, and I'm going to repeat it for you one last time. Looking behind, I am filled with gratitude. Looking forward, I am filled with vision. Looking upward, I am filled with strength. And looking within, I discover peace. I wish you all such a blessed and bright 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Renee. And we're going to now say goodbye to Facebook. Our Sunday service continues on our Zoom meeting. You can join us there at the link that you'll find at isdoneonta.org on the homepage, as well as information on all of our upcoming classes and events. We look forward to having you join us in the future. Goodbye for now. How do you stop the live stream? It's that control's not there this time, Renee. Stop
Go
live
up to the
stream.
top left where you see it, Diana, and click on the arrow where it says live on Facebook.
That's what I'm clicking on. It says
Oh,
view
okay.
stream on Facebook.